let's start talking about what are you seeing at this conference today that is really driving you forward, really exciting for you guys?
Yeah, so what I love is just seeing people focused on actual crypto adoption and actual utility of the coins. Going out to the merchants and seeing people excited about taking a new form of money and believing in Bitcoin Cash as a long-term currency really is just amazing for me. And that's what I wanted to see when I came out here.
Sure. I would agree with Josh, of course. I would say the most exciting thing here is simply seeing people use Bitcoin Cash as cash. I travel around the world, and I've seen some cities with good adoption, like Tokyo, and Bangkok has great adoption as well, but this is just unique. As soon as you land, you just see huge signs. The Bitcoin Cash is strong here, big stuff on the side of the building. I was checking out Marco Coino today, and there was just buildings all around, up and down the strip here. So as far as I understand, you can pretty much live here completely off crypto, which is pretty cool.
My co-host Corentin and Jaja, they're actually living here just straight on Bitcoin.
I agree with the same. I also noticed that this is the most interesting part of this conference and the city. But to add to that, an interesting part is they're not using a merchant. So these people actually understand Bitcoin Cash. So these merchants who are accepting it, they're not using a merchant solution. They are taking Bitcoin Cash and keeping it, which is quite incredible.
Well, same-wise, I set the goal for myself to actually not use Australian dollar at all when I'm here. So far it's been possible because there are many merchants and restaurants and bars and stuff, various services that take it. So it's all good, and we'll see if I can make that happen till the end. Otherwise, for the conference itself also, I think we have a very interesting crowd here where we've been able to accumulate the people that are actually building and making stuff happen. Be it technical stuff, but also people that work on adoption and all of that. Whereas previous conference tended to be more noisy, this one is very focused. We have a very high quality set of people here.
Now, Omri, your talk this morning was really great, talking about how we can actually build the value in this community before actually attaining any sense of adoption. My concern, I'm going to start off with the concern that I have. It's that there are still plenty of missing holes in the community in terms of, my hotel, I booked it with Bitcoin Cash. However, they still require that I put a credit card on file just because of incidentals. That's not exactly something that can happen on the layer one necessarily of Bitcoin Cash in terms of having that kind of risk involved. What other things do you guys see that are the missing holes in the community that we have to solve and plug and continue building on?
I think we need something that bridges the two worlds better, so it's easier for people to transition. In terms of crypto, stablecoins did that kind of job. They bridged the two worlds. I think something like stablecoins here would be like a credit card, which is Visa or MasterCard, but you deposit your Bitcoin Cash in it. That could be like the bridge here.
Like an escrow, yeah.
Yeah, the third party takes care of, like Zappo or some other, or Bitcoin.com is coming up with one of their own. Looking forward to that.
Any other concerns with missing holes?
Well, there's also the Shift card and a few other cards that allow you to have a credit card that's backed by crypto. I think there's also the potential, the reason they take that credit card is not because they need your identity or even that they need a credit card. What they need is insurance that you don't destroy your room. So they want capital held up just in case you go and spray paint your room with all sorts of crazy stuff or destroy property. So a way to do a contract where I can send funds, that they can pull those funds in the case of emergency, also could satisfy the use case and get rid of the need for a credit card at all.
Yeah, I think anything we can do to have merchant services for merchants. So, when merchants accept crypto, big part of the problem is volatility because, they pay their bills with this. So if they get exposed to volatility, it can be a problem. And that's one of the benefits of stable coins. And another one, services like BitPay that allow you to immediately accept accept crypto and it immediately transfers to fiat in your bank account. I think those are really valuable. Of course, we want people to hold, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the end goal. Also, just being able to accept it. So I think anything we can get for merchant services is the next big play as well.
What's your impression of the merchants in this town? I talked with someone earlier today who actually is holding on to it as much as she can, but there are also those who go immediately and transition it into the local currency. What's your impression of the local business here?
So I guess I'll start. Most of them are just using regular wallets or the BCH register app. They're controlling their own keys, and they aren't actually converting to fiat immediately. And this is a benefit in this particular economy, is that the businesses can do business with each other. people need to remember is that 100% of their revenue is not coming in BCH just because they accept BCH. We're still talking a small percentage of their revenue that's actually BCH that they're holding. So if they can take that and then use that for other services at other businesses inside of the local ecosystem, that's what kind of creates that chain of, businesses that do business with each other and keeps it in the economy. And I'm seeing that actually happening here. And when I went to a salon moksha room here, and I talked to the lady there, and she buys her supplies with the crypto that she gets, so she keeps it in the economy. And it's amazing to see that, because I've yet to see a BitPay merchant or someone that is converting directly to fiat. Now, there are definitely companies that that's important for, and what I try to tell them is don't convert everything to fiat. Right now, your credit card processor is going to charge 2 to 3%. So if you are using BitPay and they charge 1%, store 1 to 2% as BCH. Your downside's exactly what you have today with the credit card system, and then you have a potential upside if the price goes up or things are more rosy in the community. So it's a win-win situation for them. They don't lose any capital that they otherwise would have had.
I mean, on that matter, though, there seems to be a level of stability that they don't want to be exposed to. What solutions are out there to integrate Bitcoin Cash into the community in that sense, where they're actually involved with it, holding on to it, utilizing it for their own purposes at the end of all this? I mean, I saw a presentation earlier today about Hula, that kind of thing. Can you talk a bit about that project, any of you, or what that kind of solution looks like?
I mean, if you have people that are interested in acquiring crypto, then they don't have to get it from an exchange. It's a much better situation if you can figure out the legal way to actually be able to offload that BCH at point of sale or at the point of location. So there are other ways for businesses to mitigate that risk. They can offer the sale of BCH or other things directly through their merchant and hold on to the BCH directly and stay away from having to use an exchange all the time to do that. Hula, so Hula...
They also don't pay the spread, right? Because when you go on an exchange, the price of people selling and the price of people buying, there is like a spread between the two. And so you get to pay the fee for exchange, but you got to pay the spread.
But with Hula, they just track the transactions, and the underwriter just wants to get crypto at the current market rate without paying that extra tax through the exchanges. This is really smart for anyone that's trying to acquire a large amount of Bitcoin Cash, as they save a lot of money in that process, and it automates away the risk for them by having systems like that.
It's increasing adoption this way because more merchants can accept it because they have this person to sell to, and this person is also increasing the value of his Bitcoin Cash holding by spreading adoption in a way.
I want to transition a little bit into mining. I know that's your topic in general. With mining, we're talking a lot about merchants right now, people who can use it in terms of currency, but there's also the back end of verifying the network. Is there a need for this community to also invest into mining and verification and the protocol in general? What's that looks like? What's the need there?
I do not think there's a need for it. They can still keep using Bitcoin Cash like they are using without mining it, because there are miners around the world already doing that. And mining doesn't. Mining is not obligatory. And mining is also risky. You can't be sure about the return on investment with mining because you commit a lot of initial investment and you buy the ASICs, and then you're not sure if the markets will be favorable to your plans or not. So yeah, if anyone wants to do mining, I say just make a very well-informed decision. It is just like proof of stake. You lock in your money, and it's even more strict form of proof of stake because you can't cancel that proof of stake. It's really locked in. There's no way your money's going to come out. You buy these ASICs, and your only hope is that you are so committed that the price has to go up.
I mean,
or at least remain the way it was when you bought the miner.
Right. Gabriel, I want to ask you a bit about SLP tokens in the space. I mean, we're in Bitcoin Cash City, so merchants are using Bitcoin Cash. What is the value of adding on the SLP layer to this community, where they're using it and it's integrated? Even to this community, what's the value of adding the SLP layer?
Because it will allow them to do more than just accept payments. So perfect example is we're working with a company in Japan called ANA, and they have a subsidiary called, a small company called ANA, and they have a small company called ACD, which is Airline Cargo Direct, and we just launched their token, and they're going to be tokenizing like airline mileage points. So that's just a small example. Like a company here could tokenize loyalty points and stuff like that. So I think there's benefit in, like I mentioned on stage yesterday, raising capital, and then there's also just in tokenizing different things like loyalty points and stuff like that.
Sorry. Now, talking about that layer on top of Bitcoin Cash. I mean, you were a part of the original fork of Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin ABC. I want to open up the conversation here about what's integral to this project of Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin in general. What's integral to it? Is it the decentralized nature of it, no central point of failure? Is it the uncensorability? Is it the globalness to it? What's integral to this technology?
Okay, so I think the most important pieces about it is like people need to understand what cash is. Cash is a technology that allows one person to transmit value to another person without any third party to be involved. And we've been doing that with like, coins and banknotes and all of that, but we had no electronic way to do that before Bitcoin, right? This was always reliant on like Visa, MasterCard, your bank, PayPal. There is always someone that is there processing the transaction for you. And that means that those people know about all the transactions that you're doing, so there is a privacy element there that is not very good. It also means that those people can refuse to process some transaction, right? So we've seen that, for instance, when WikiLeaks published some document, then Visa and MasterCard stopped processing payment to WikiLeaks, right? And so we see that it's very important to have something that is like cash, but electronic. Because we're in the information age, people want to buy stuff on the internet, and you cannot like put coins in your computer to buy stuff on the internet. So you need like an electronic way to do that. And that is where the revolution of Bitcoin is. And everything else, like the decentralization and the mining and whatever, all of that is important to the extent that it's supporting that ultimate goal.
All in agreement? Do you have anything to add to that?
I think that it's really important to also note that one of the limitations we had with cash, as in paper money, is that it was difficult to send it long distances. So all of a sudden, not only has crypto created a digital cash, but it's created a way to make distance not a factor anymore. So it makes it like an email. I can send my cash anywhere in the world at any time for a low fee, and it's censorship resistant, and there's no one that invades your privacy. So it's a totality of all these different pieces, but a lot of people just look at the underlying technology and try to point those things out, and don't look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is peer-to-peer cash. I can send money to anyone, anywhere, and it doesn't matter if someone doesn't like me doing that. They can't stop me because it is actually peer-to-peer. And that allows us to, fund kids in Africa. It allows us to do things that the traditional monetary system can't do. Also allows for micropayment use cases that just were not practical before cryptocurrency existed.
Plus, again, I think it's worth reiterating the power of tokens. So everything we're talking about, this ability with cash, you can take that and apply it to other forms of value transfer. So I think the cash is only really one layer of the abstraction. You can take that same thing and say we are going to transfer a value, and it can be things that are above and beyond just this notion of cash. So the value transfer is really where it's at.
And tokens are also very much linked to the cash use case because of tools like SLP dividends allows the loyalty points to actually receive cash. So you have this cash layer that contains most of the value, and then you have items that represent real world goods or services or whatever that can be tokenized in SLP, and that ecosystem is very synergistic in the totality of it. And we were able to do tokens in a way that didn't affect the consensus of the network, which it was really good because it allowed us to get to the token ecosystem faster, and in a way that actually has turned out quite well with tools like SLPDB.
Answering the same question and adding to what Amaury said, so I totally agree that is the basic you should always remember, and people often forget that, and then they start working on second layer solutions which cripple the main layer, and then they believe that the second layer solutions can replace the main layer because they forget this very basic founding ideology that Amaury described. And so I believe that people should, even if they're working on second layer solution, they should not forget that it goes hand in hand with on-chain scaling. And every transaction, the faster it's recorded on-chain, the better and secure it is. And the more in tune with the ideology that Emory just described it is.
Now, you mentioned a global aspect to this, a peer-to-peer aspect to this. I want to put on our marketing caps here and think about who is the target super fan of this technology. Like hanging out with people this weekend, I realized that I think a big part of it is a global citizen type of person, someone who travels enough to warrant this kind of need for a global currency, someone who spends more in terms of online payments. Who is the ideal person that Bitcoin is effective to?
Another very important here is we often forget that this is often used by activists and people who want to change the world for better, despite the resistance they face from their governments, not international governments, because governments have different policies. What's legal in one country is, what is illegal in one country is legal in some other country. So there are many activists out there trying to make the world a better place, but they face resistances from one or a group of countries which have a different legal system. So this really helps those activists to make the world a better place.
So activists who are working against what they're locked out of is what you're saying.
Yeah, and locked out of minor things which are not internationally even accepted, because even the governments can't come to the same table and say this is wrong, but it's because of some politics that happen at regional levels, because of which these things are illegal in one country but legal in others. And WikiLeaks, like was already brought up, is one example of whistleblowers is a great example of people who want to make the world a better place, but then the central authorities or the powers to be do not allow them to do that.
So I think one of the great things about Bitcoin Cash is that there are many people who will probably find it useful. So you might imagine that there's like a farmer in Africa who is underbanked or doesn't have access to banking and wants somehow an easy way to have a currency that's not going to be instantly devalued by their government, and they can have some type of local commerce. You might imagine somebody like myself who travels around the world and is in a different country a couple times a month and wants to be able to real easily send money to my mom or to my son or something like that that's cross-border and very quick. You might imagine somebody like my son who's totally digitally native and just lives in a world of online tokens and points and stuff like that, and being able to tie that all to a blockchain and have identity and stuff like that. And then you might imagine some high-frequency trader on Wall Street who might be able to just do nothing but bot trading and make a bunch of money, or a software engineer who might just geek out on the tech stack. So really, I think there are many different people who might really vibe on it.
Pretty much, that's what I wanted to say.
Now, my concern with that, though, is you have all these different people coming into the same community, the same currency, but they may have different goals. Like, for instance, the banker is more interested in integrating Bitcoin with the institutions, and so like there's a level of legality or regulation that they actually want that would remain the sense of keeping someone locked out of the financial institution. How do you, I guess, integrate all these different kinds of people?
Because then nobody controls it. You have all those group of people that want to put it in different direction, and they keep each other in check, and you create this kind of Mexican standoff that somehow works, and there is no single part that you can thwart, and then the system doesn't work anymore, which is an extremely strong feature of those new cryptocurrency.
I completely agree with what Amari's saying, and we're talking about money. Money is a tool that can be used by a wide variety of participants. And if you have a very homogenous group that is using the money, it's not money yet. Money is supposed to be for people that disagree and have different ways of looking at it, different interests in what they want to do. It's a tool to allow for value transfer, not to have an opinion as to what that value transfer is or what the tools, like what services they need. It needs to be for everyone. It's supposed to be a permissionless network where everyone can participate. So one person may just want to be able to store some value because they can't use the financial system and they need to store $3 because that's what they have per month. And then there's other people that have lots of money that want to do financial service trading. Great. It needs to be available to everyone, or you haven't hit the goal of true peer-to-peer cash.
Now, I'm gonna add a challenge to that, because I know some people watching this or hearing this will be somewhat more skeptical. When you talk about those kind of examples, those real-world humanistic examples, I do believe that's going to be the majority of the value that this technology and this community is creating. However, I mean, you gave a talk about coin shuffle and the need for privacy and whatnot. Now, there is a worry there about the use in illegal activities like human trafficking or truly vile things like that. How do you get the balance, or talk a bit about that?
And if you cannot buy drug with it, or if you cannot bribe a politician with it, or if you cannot go see prostitute with it, it's not money, right? And you got to assume that people are going to do a lot of good things with money and a lot of bad things with money. And if they cannot do all those things, then that's not money.
So I agree. I'm going to phrase it a little bit differently, but I definitely agree with that sentiment. When it comes to money, if you look at what fiat currencies are doing today, there's tons of nefarious activity there that proves the point that any good money will be used for illicit activity. And it's the privacy concerns between peer-to-peer cash don't stop law enforcement from enforcing the law in different ways. Right now, they try to trace your money because they can, because there are third parties, because governments can inspect your bank and your bank transfers and all of that, so they use that as a legal tool to try to find bad behavior. But when you talk about human trafficking, there's also the shipping of people in boats. There is actual physical activity, and I think that people need to do their due diligence and investigation and find people that are committing the crime instead of taking a short circuit, violating everyone's privacy to try to find it through monetary flows through the economy. That is not necessary for law enforcement. Those activities are bad, but there are other ways to catch those criminals and to stop that illicit behavior that has nothing to do with monetary movement. And I think I prefer a world that is that way, because anytime someone can say you can or cannot spend your money, money is the representation of your work, of the effort you've put into the economy that you are due back because of valuable contributions that you've done. So how can a third party tell me that my value contribution is no longer valid? Why is it okay that they can turn off my bank account because they didn't like what I did with it? Well, arrest me for what I did that was wrong. Don't lock up the money.
So what you're saying is, like, even the technology made surveillance from the state capable, but that doesn't mean we can't question that surveillance through those means. Right.
Also, for the illicit activities that only involve money flow, right now it's easier because the governments have found ways of tracking them. For example, cash couldn't be tracked before, but now people are using second layer solutions like credit cards or Visa, and they can be tracked better. So with time, when regulations are in place, I believe cryptocurrencies will also be more law-friendly and easier for the governments to track and integrate into their existing laws.
So yeah, I wanted to kind of touch on that, like, pseudonymity to the Bitcoin network. I mean, that does mean that you can track it. It is a public record that is still very viable. Is that valuable for law enforcement still, or is that valuable in other ways? I guess in the sense that it kind of conflicts with privacy, but you can still utilize the public record.
We have tons of examples outside of currency where privacy was favored over the protections that are provided by law enforcement. Do you have Telegram on your phone? Do you have Signal on your phone? Do you use HTTPS or Tor or other tools for privacy? No one complains that they're using Telegram, and that also enables criminals to communicate and do absolutely nefarious things because they have privacy in their communications. Money is very much, to me, a form of communication, and I think that we need to view it in the same light and find ways to allow money to move without that being the legal construct to find damages or something that has gone wrong. And that paradigm is a paradigm shift. But it doesn't mean the acceptance of illegal activity. It's the knowledge that illegal activity does occur with cash-based markets because it's people. And governments are a representation of people and a collective of people. So those people that make those decisions, if enough of them decide to make that decision, that's how laws are changed. And allowing people the flexibility to vote with their dollars and interact in the economy, we look at, legislation around marijuana in California and in Denver and other areas. Well, guess what? People traded those goods illegally for cash for many years before a critical mass was hit, where people acknowledge that it should be legal, whether it's medicinal or not. So you have to allow for cultural change of the population to occur, and that always starts with money and trading value. And limiting that means limiting this free speech of the society to show where the government and the laws should lead in the future and provide fairer, better laws for the populations they're governing.
Now, guys, what's the next step forward, or what are ways that this community can continue growing in a healthy sense, in a way that moves this project forward, that doesn't challenge its own layer one presuppositions, its own principles? How do we continue growing in that right direction?
Coming back to what Emory said before, not forgetting that what this technology was meant to be in the beginning. I think that's the most important principle.
Yeah, I think we need to have an open mind as a community. We need to be inclusive. We also need to have our guard up again against people, who might come in from and try and do nefarious. But we have to understand that if we're trying to go global, that we're talking about everybody. So we've got to kind of be inclusive. And at the same time, I just think we should be open-minded as a community. There's no guarantee that any of this is going to be successful, any of the coins, any of the chains. Presumably something someday will be, but there's no guarantee on anything. So we have to be willing to take a chance. We have to be willing to. There can be no sacred cows in the context of ideas. There can be no ideas that we can be afraid to ask. There can be no topics that we be afraid to broach. Even if we know we're not going to go there, we have to have an open mind and be willing to consider.
So. Because this is money, and we've seen that already happening with BCH, we're going to have a lot of bad people and a lot of good people coming in the community. And we need to get very good at recognizing which is which. And the way I would recommend doing that, obviously I cannot impose how the community is going to behave, but the way I would recommend doing that is you optimistically cooperate with people that join and want to participate. But as soon as they show a sign of, not doing what's the best, even if they say they do and all of that, because bad people won't tell you they are bad people usually, we need to be very willing to also show them the door. And I think we have not been good enough at doing that. And, people are a bit afraid that if you show some people the door, actually your community is now smaller and it's more difficult, but this is not what happened in practice. What happened in practice is that good people see that and want to join. And you're going to accumulate better and better people and more of them over time.
I definitely agree with the sentiment from Amari and Gabriel. And I also think it's really important for us to find the issues that we agree on, right? Like the roadmaps that we want to build to get to that next level of infrastructure, find the commonalities, and focus on building the things that are commonalities that we know need to be done as a community. And worry less about the disagreements up front. There's lots of work that needs to be done that we do have some consensus needs to be done. And so let's focus on those together, and then on the more contentious issues, be willing to sit at a table and talk to them. And that's not playing to the trolls, right? I agree with, if there's toxic people, we don't want them involved. But a difference of opinion is not a toxic person, as long as they have an educated reason for having that decision, and the discussion is extremely important. So having a way to mediate the different parties that have a different point of view because they care, because they want to push the currency forward, try to find those commonalities and build from those commonalities, I think is something we need to learn to do better over time and would be really healthy for our community.
Now, what is the next thing to happen? Do you imagine? I mean, I've had conversations here. South Sudan has been mentioned. Is it your son's generation of like the next game will actually be utilizing a blockchain currency, and the whole generation will understand it now? What is the next tangible step? Do you think that's going to be happening in the next year, next 2 years, or is my timeline wrong? Even what's the next thing to happen? Or are you looking to happen? I mean, what are you keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think it's kind of, I go around, I talk to so many people, and they're always like, man, Bitcoin is so complicated. I just don't know. And I always try and say, really, it's not. It's digital cash. Boom, say no more. So really, I think the next big leap is kind of peeling off that whole mystique. And everybody, even when I was coming in here checking in my ticket, one of the ladies with the animals was like, man, I wish I understood Bitcoin. I just don't understand it. And I'm like, you do. You have money in your wallet. You understand it. So I think that's the next thing, is for people just to internalize that it's not crazy complex. It's actually incredibly intuitive and simple. It's digital cash.
Very well said, and I think that we know we are successful when someone looks at their Bitcoin Cash wallet just as money and doesn't think of it as some crazy technology or some crazy tool used by techies. It's just money. There's a balance on their phone. They exchange value. Most people don't understand how the existing financial system works, and they are happily using the tools and services that exist within it. And if we can get to the point where the people are not afraid and they don't think it's just for the technical crowd, I think that's the next big step for the world to accept cryptocurrencies.
Likewise, I think that coming back to again the founding value of cryptocurrencies, where you don't want intermediaries, you want P2P cash on the digital world. People should just people. I believe in the next 2 or 3 years, people will start seeing it that way, and they will realize that the money in the bank is not really their money.
Yeah, so every time you do any kind of project, you go through 3 phases. The first one is going to be like an exploration phase. You try different stuff, you see what works and what doesn't, right? So on the product side, in cryptocurrency, we are very much still in the exploration phase. People are building all kind of products and figuring out like what works on the market and what doesn't. And this is why on the product side of things, your question is a bit difficult to answer because the whole goal of the exploration phase is to gather that information. And there are like many entrepreneurs in that space that are trying different stuff. And in a few years, it's going to be clear like, you know, which one is right and not. But this is the nature of the explore phase. And then you go to a second phase, which is the expand phase. And this is more where we are right now at the infrastructure level. So we know how to do the infrastructure for peer-to-peer cash. And the question is, how do we make it bigger, faster, right? This is essentially what you do during the expand phase. You want as many people to be able to use it, and you want to improve what you know works and what you know is good. So on our side, on the infrastructure, that means make sure that we can scale to much bigger size, and make sure that we can do the stuff that are good. So settlement, for instance, faster, as fast as we can, and provide as strongest guarantee as we can. So that's for the infrastructure. And then there is the third phase, that is extract. And extract is like when you try to optimize everything you have to drive down the cost and try to get some value from the people that are using it because you're providing value to them. And hopefully, we're gonna get into that phase eventually. But right now, I'd say on the product front, so what most people are using, we're very much in explore phase, and on the infrastructure phase, and on the infrastructure side, we are on an expand phase.
Now we are a pretty global group of people here. I kind of want to go around and ask you, where is the energy coming from globally, and where's the who's taking the lead in regulation wise? In my show last April we talked about Hester Pierce and her work in the SEC. She's from Mercatus. I think they have a solid look on things, but where is it coming from? What are the best practices in this regulatory space? Where's the energy coming from?
It's good that you mentioned both the things in the same question, which is the energy coming from and where the regulation is good, because regulation is good where people are showing more proactiveness. So in US, for example, there are many self-regulatory authorities. There's a Chamber for Digital Commerce, then there are some others. There's Coin Center, and then there's some others trying to proactively make regulations or gather information that lawmakers will need, if not now, in the future. So whenever lawmakers are making some laws about cryptocurrency or don't understand, they call on these bodies, and these bodies are always ready with answers before the questions are even there.
Yeah, so in my personal experience, there is an absolute amazing amount of energy coming out of Asia in general. I spend a lot of my time in Tokyo, of course, but I also have been China and Beijing and Shanghai and Shenzhen, and then also Hong Kong and then Seoul, Korea, and so all of those places I've been, there's absolute amazing amount of crypto knowledge. Nishant's based in Beijing, and Bitmain is there, and obviously Bitmain is absolutely amazing. We're based in Tokyo. There's a ton going on in Tokyo. Then you have places like this in Australia where there's genuinely the most grassroots adoption I've ever seen. It's crazy. Anybody who sees this, I really urge you to come down here and check this out. And then there's just the fact that everybody is distributed, so there's smart developers all around the world. But as I perceive it, what I always say is when I'm in Hong Kong and I'm in Tokyo, I feel like I'm one smart move away from being incredibly successful. And that's simply, maybe it's because I'm part of the Bitcoin.com bubble when I'm there, but it's just that when you're there, you really just feel like you're only 1 or 2 smart moves away. So myself, I think at the moment, Asia really feels like where it's the hottest.
I mean, you're based in China. I'm talking from an American perspective here, so I feel like there is a language barrier, a cultural barrier. Describe to me what's going on in East Asia and China. I know there's a lot of noise. I want to get some signal though.
So a good thing about the regulators in China is they encourage innovation, and they let any new technology spread to as big as it can be, and only introduce regulations when it's reached a very disruptive scale, because then it makes sense. For example, there was self-driving cycles, not self-driving cycles, cycles, shared cycles, shared bicycles is very big in China, and they let them expand. They didn't introduce laws in the beginning, and when they became a menace where they were just piled up on the streets and the roads were blocked because people just parked them anywhere, then they introduced laws like there needs to be one person responsible for 10 bicycles. Then they reduced these laws by one person, 5 bicycle ratio. So these companies who are operating these bicycles need to employ those people. They did the same with Didi, which is the Uber of China. They did not stop Uber from coming in like Europe did and some Western economies did, or Airbnb, like it was blocked in Europe and other countries. China is just encourages new innovation, let them grow to a big scale, let the companies develop very strong, and after they are strong enough, then they introduce these laws which do not harm the company, do not bring them back to infancy. They just make the companies more mature, because nothing can stop them. They're already strong, these companies. So that is a good approach that the Chinese government takes. With ICOs, again, they reached a crazy scale. ICOs, before anyone in the world even knew what ICOs were, they were happening in China. No one even had heard the abbreviation outside China, ICO, but they were happening there. And they thrived there. But then they came to a level where people were losing more money than anyone was making money, and then the government stepped in and stopped them and banned ICOs. So that's a great approach that Chinese government takes on these things.
I don't know. I don't have much to add on the subject, especially since in Europe, it's happening in Eastern Europe. It's not happening that much in Western Europe. I'd say probably Western Europe have been having very good financial services already, and government that are pretty responsible. People in Eastern Europe, they have this experience of being under the influence of the Soviet Russia that is still very present in their minds, so they tend to be like very free market and understand the problem that crypto are solving much better. And yeah, that's pretty much the situation in Europe, and this is what I know best because this is where I live. So.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to regulation, I think what's really important are bigger companies in the space to work with regulators. The reality is regulation is coming, it is happening, and there's no preventing it under any circumstance. So the only answer is, what is that regulation going to be, and is it going to be fair and just regulation that makes sense for cryptocurrency to be used for payments and investment or whatever use cases someone wants to use it for. So Coinbase tries to actually has people that works with the SEC and other people to deem kind of what are cryptocurrencies that we're allowed to support in the United States, that are something that are safe to offer to our end users, and tries to provide recommendations for fairer, safer cryptocurrency laws. And I think that's absolutely essential. And I encourage any larger scale businesses to take a proactive approach to talking to legislators, because if they're not talking to them, someone else will. And it'll lead to regulations that they can't control. So we want to be able to control the dialogue when it happens for regulation. We want to make sure we're guiding people in the right way and have fair things for people to use. For instance, there's a bill up to allow for a certain denomination of crypto to not be taxed when spent. And I think it was like $500 or $600 that you're allowed to spend, and it's not a taxable event anymore. That's a very fair legislation. No one's money laundering at that level. There's no real bad negative side effect to allowing that to occur, but it allows for a natural crypto economy that is fair to actually start to be established. And it's a great starting point for a fairer crypto economy. Now, when it comes to actual adoption and where I see it most is when I was in Japan, when I'm here, absolutely have seen it a lot more than I've seen in the United States. In the United States, it's a lot more speculative, a lot more people just trading and trying to make money off of crypto, but not a lot of grassroots adoption from merchants to take it. And a lot of that is because the financial services are extremely mature in the United States. A lot of people are already using payment processors that they think are solving the problems that they need. So if you go into your average business in San Francisco, they're going to use Square, they're going to use Revel, or they're going to use one of a very small handful of payment processors, and that's pretty much ubiquitous across the ecosystem of vendors there. So until we can get to the point where the larger payment processors are also accepting crypto, it's a hard sell for businesses to have another point of sale system, another system they need to train their employees on. It needs to be seamless for them in those environments because of the scale that they operate. So if I go into even the food trucks, the line might be a block long, and they're only there for 2 hours, but they service thousands of people. So the tools they use, they don't want to have to be playing around with anything they're not familiar with. So another approach that I'd love to see are more people reaching out and providing tools for payment processors to make it easier for them to accept crypto. Because while I wish everybody held on to the crypto they accepted, just being able to accept it does unlock a lot of use cases for us users that want to participate in the crypto economy. And so I see it as a two-phase process to convince them of the value. All of a sudden, maybe some of the businesses they do business with are willing to accept crypto, and they're more willing to hold on to crypto and keep those closed cycle economies.
I did want to mention something else because I forgot about the regulation part of the question. So there are some places around the world that are already trying to wrap their mind around crypto and tokenomics and set frameworks to attract entrepreneurs. So the perfect example in the United States, both sides of the coin are, on one side you have the New York license by Ben Losky in New York. I don't know if Josh can speak to it or not, but if I remember, whenever Coinbase got their bit license, it was like crazy expensive, crazy slow. If you flip that, and you know that was in New York, which is the financial services capital of the United States. So you might argue that they're putting up roadblocks in order to prevent this innovation from coming in and changing everything. And then you look at Wyoming, where you have Caitlin Long and Tyler Lindholm and the Wyoming Blockchain Commission, and they have recently done a bunch of great work over the past few years where token issuers are exempt from money transmitter laws. Tokens are within the state of Wyoming. There's several of them. So for example, in Wyoming, they created the LLC. So they just created a new class of LLC. So every single purchaser of your token can be their own unique LLC, and they can be completely firewalled from each other. There's a bunch of exciting things happening in Wyoming. So that they're trying to become, you know, like the blockchain valley of the United States. And then I went to Jeju Island in Korea, and they're like a semi-autonomous zone off the south coast of Korea, and they're able to move real quick as well. And they're drafting a bunch of laws. They're trying to become like the Pacific coast blockchain of the entire sort of Eurasia area. And so, you know, there are some countries, Thailand, Singapore, Malta. There's also places in the Bahamas like Antigua and St. Kitts. You know, there are different places around the world that want crypto because they know that they have an opportunity to set themselves forward. And so I think that's really what's going to flesh out over the next 5 years. And, you know, working on a team which is launching tokens, it's very common that people will launch tokens and they won't allow people in the United States to purchase them, or they won't allow people within certain European countries to purchase them. And that really is unfortunate for people in the United States, because that's going to be a big roadblock on innovation, and that's going to end up coming backfiring on the United States, because, you know, everything we can do to enable people to create innovation is what uplifts, you know, the human condition and drives value and puts your country forward. And so any roadblocks you put on that, some other country's just going to go around you. So I think over the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to see that all clarify, and I hope that things become a lot easier in the United States, because right now it's challenging to at least launch a token and raise money in the United States, and you have to focus on Hong Kong or doing something else.
Now, guys, I want to thank you guys for your time. You know, you guys are really busy guys, and I want to wrap this up with the last question. What have you been able to spend Bitcoin Cash on in this city so far? What's your favorite purchase or service? And tell me how it went.
I guess I'll go ahead and start. So I got my flight, I got my hotel, I got all of my food, I went to a salon, I stopped at little convenience stores, little shops all over, and I've been exclusively on Bitcoin Cash for this trip, except for a little down payment at the hotel for my credit card for insurance. The rest of it was all Bitcoin Cash, and basically you can live on it here, and I wanted to see what that felt like. And so I came here with the express purpose of going to the merchants here and documenting that. So a lot of them I put on Twitter, little videos of like just random shops that I went to, and just to show the world that this is happening. This is real. It's not just an illusion or someone trying to fake the world out, that there's Bitcoin Cash adoption somewhere, and really documenting what it feels like. And I'm going to continue to do that during my stay.
Yeah, so far as well, I got my plane and my hotel, and then food. I think I haven't paid for it yet, but I think the coolest thing I'm hoping to do before we leave is we're going to be doing some helicopter tours. I'm here with my son and my mom, so we're doing like touristy stuff over the next few days, and I think that one seems pretty cool, being able to pay for a helicopter tour. But like I said, we have a really cool app called marcocoino.bitcoin.com, and basically it's just like a merchant app. And if you pull out that merchant app and you're in downtown Townsville and you let it get your location, it just lights up all around you, dozens and dozens of people. So you see everything from, I saw gyms, and I saw obviously tons of restaurants, hotels, all kinds of different touristy stuff. So pretty much you can do everything in Townsville with BCH.
You know,
Laundromat. They have like tons of like regular services, auto body work. Now I don't need that. I'm traveling, but it's amazing just to look at the map, and they're real.
I was really surprised by the fact that there was a heating and cooling, get your air conditioning fixed at your house if you lived here with Bitcoin Cash.
The same. All the food I bought here, almost all, except for one meal and one beer. Everything I bought here, all the drinks have been paid for in Bitcoin Cash. That's really cool. I'm also looking forward to the helicopter ride today or tomorrow, which would be paid for in Bitcoin Cash. And like they said, there are even other services that we are not using as tourists, but day-to-day services that residents may need sometimes that are accepting Bitcoin Cash. For example, my phone fell and broke, and the screen is cracked. And someone told me there's a Bitcoin Cash merchant here who replaces phone screens. And then there's yesterday when I was at the meetup and I was having drinks with some people here, there was someone, the person who lives here met, and that person is an electrician. So if you have something broken at your home, some electronics that need to be fixed, that person accepts Bitcoin Cash to fix those electronics. That's really cool.
So the good stuff with like the phone screen guy is that it better have to do a good job or you cannot pay him, literally. Yeah, he has the right incentives here. Well, personally, I've been actually fairly busy with the conference and all of that. I landed like soon before the conference, so I didn't have that much time to do like touristy stuff. So mostly food, hotel, stuff like that. But all in BCH so far.
I'm planning on taking the jet skis out. There's a water sports place right across there, and so I'm gonna do some jet skiing on Bitcoin Cash tomorrow. But
Sounds like a lot of fun.
hey, feel free to join me tomorrow. But guys, thanks guys so much, and we'll follow up later with the video.